For 3 long years, the skies over Burkina Faso held their breath. Rain clouds vanished, rivers thinned into dusty veins, and lakes became cracked mirrors of a dying land. In the capital city of Ouagadougou, people no longer queued for food, they waited for water. Mothers carried empty buckets like sacred vessels. Children learned to say, "thirst," before they ever said, "school." The drought wasn't just a natural disaster, it was becoming a political earthquake. Rural villages emptied. Protests exploded across cities. A liter of water cost more than a liter of gasoline, sold only in foreign currency by foreign companies. In the shadows of desperation, global powers circled. Western intelligence agencies prepared a covert operation codenamed Water Coup. The goal? Overthrow a president who refused to kneel. The president? Ibrahim Traoré. What neither the CIA, nor French operatives, nor even the opposition knew, was that deep beneath the sand, hope was stirring. A secret project, buried under layers of security, ambition, and ancient geology, was quietly coming alive. Its name, the Blue Belt. It was led not by a general, but by a young geologist named Dr. Zeta. Trained in China and armed with a tablet filled with seismic data, he brought with him a staggering revelation: an underground water basin beneath the Sahara, untouched since the last ice age. If true, it could quench not just Burkina Faso, but an entire region, and change the global balance of power. But powerful forces were determined to stop it. This is the story of how a desert became a battlefield. How water became a weapon, and a hope. And how one nation dared to dig not just for survival, but for sovereignty. By the 3rd year of drought, Burkina Faso was unraveling. Villages that once thrived on millet fields and mango trees stood empty, their residents having fled to urban centers in search of water. Ouagadougou's main square had become the epicenter of desperation. Every morning, thousands gathered with jerrycans, chanting the same plea: "We want water." But there was none. Inside the presidential palace, Ibrahim Traoré stood by the window, staring down at the swelling crowd. His face was a mask, but behind it, his mind was racing. Defense Minister Urego briefed him grimly: 5 cities in the north had been abandoned, refugees were pressing at the Mali border, and international aid was stalled. "They've closed their borders," Urego added. "Even Mali won't take our people anymore." To make matters worse, Aqua Global, a multinational corporation with near-monopoly control over West Africa's clean water, had hiked prices again. 1 liter now cost more than a liter of fuel. Worse still, they accepted only euros or dollars. Burkina Faso, struggling under IMF debt and a shrinking economy, was effectively parched and powerless. "They're not selling water," Traoré muttered, "they're selling surrender." The crisis didn't go unnoticed. International media flooded the airwaves with reports of impending humanitarian collapse. CNN and France 24 aired opposition statements from exiled ministers. The narrative was being written, and it didn't favor the government. In Paris, former Foreign Minister Kabore gave interviews calling for international intervention to save the people of Burkina Faso from a failed regime. And in a sleek conference room thousands of kilometers away, French and American intelligence agencies huddled. Their plan was already named Water Coup. The objective? Use the growing unrest to install a new, Western-aligned government. The pretext? A humanitarian emergency. The real reason? To maintain control over the region's most precious, and now politicized, resource: water. At this point, Burkina Faso wasn't just suffering. It was under siege. President Traoré knew what was coming. He could see the pattern. Sudan, Egypt, Libya, now Burkina Faso. First, deprive them of water. Then, offer them loans with impossible terms. Finally, take control when they collapse. But even as his cabinet warned of collapse, a sliver of hope knocked at the door. Dr. Adama Zeta had arrived. And in his leather bag, he carried a map that could change everything. When Dr. Adama Zeta entered the presidential palace, no one expected the young geologist to carry a revolution in his hands. He was calm but intense, eyes sharp, movements precise. 2 years earlier, he had proposed a theory, that beneath the burning sands of northern Burkina Faso lay an ancient aquifer, a remnant of the Ice Age. At the time, President Traore had dismissed it as a dream. But now, with the country gasping for water, he was willing to listen. Zeta placed his tablet on the war room table. With a swipe, a 3D geological model appeared, a massive subterranean water basin stretching beneath the Sahara, spanning national borders into Mali, Niger, and Chad. Based on recent seismic data, he said, this basin holds approximately 500 billion cubic meters of fresh water. Untouched. Untapped. The room fell silent. If we can reach it, Zeta continued, it could supply all of Burkina Faso's water needs for the next 100 years. And more importantly, it could make us independent. President Traore picked up the tablet. The significance hit him immediately. This was more than a reservoir. It was liberation in liquid form. But the dream came with a price. The first phase alone would cost an estimated $2 billion. The full project? Between $5 to $6 billion. Minister of Economy Dio was blunt, the IMF won't finance it. The World Bank won't touch it. They're already pressuring us to privatize our remaining water systems. What about China? Asked Defense Minister Urego. Zeta nodded. I trained in Shanghai. I worked on China's Gobi Desert project. The technology exists. But if we ask them to help, we'll be declaring economic war on France and the West. That was the truth. The aquifer might be buried under the desert, but it was also buried beneath layers of geopolitics. Yet Traore saw clearly now. Water was no longer just about survival. It was the foundation of sovereignty. And the Blue Belt, Zeta's codename for the project, was the blueprint for a new future. This project isn't just about Burkina Faso, Traore declared. It's about all of us, West Africa. We will not extract this water alone. We will build a coalition. The stakes had shifted. What started as a scientific theory had become a regional revolution. In a bunker beneath the presidential palace, shielded from signals, satellites, and spies, President Traore gathered his most trusted ministers and engineers. The room was dimly lit, maps spread across the table like battle plans. Dr. Zeta stood beside a wall-sized display of the Sahara Basin, detailing its reach. From the arid north of Burkina Faso into Mali, Niger, Chad, and Senegal. This is not a national resource, he said. It's continental. That night, Traore laid out a vision that went beyond borders. We cannot protect this project alone. The West will crush us if we go solo, he said. But together, we can change the rules. His idea was radical: form a water-based regional alliance, a united front of drought-stricken nations, to co-develop the Blue Belt project. By pooling resources, knowledge, and diplomatic weight, they could resist Western pressure and own their future. The strategy would unfold in 3 phases. Technical collaboration, each country to map its underground reserves. Joint financing, tapping into non-Western lenders, BRICS nations, the African Development Bank. Political summit, to form a formal pact, starting with water, expanding into energy and trade. But what about Mali? asked Defense Minister Urego. Relations are tense. We've had skirmishes. They're tense because we compete for scraps, Traore replied. This project gives us abundance. Let's share the source, and we'll share stability. By dawn, encrypted messages had been sent to trusted envoys in 4 neighboring capitals. A new map was being drawn, not by colonial powers, but by Africans. It wasn't just an engineering plan. It was a rebellion in blueprint form. Far from the desert, in a quiet government building in Paris, the alarm bells were ringing. Philippe Dubois, chief of the Africa desk, scanned the intelligence report with narrowing eyes. It confirmed what his team feared. President Traore had convened a high-level meeting in a signal-blocked room deep within the presidential palace. Among the attendees was a man of particular concern, Dr. Adama Zeta. Shanghai-trained geologist, Dubois muttered. Worked on China's Gobi Desert water recovery. He's not just a scientist. He's a catalyst. Dubois called for an emergency meeting. Within hours, top French officials, the Director of Intelligence, the CEO of Aqua Global, and foreign policy advisors gathered. They reviewed satellite images, intercepted communications, and political forecasts. If Traore begins this Blue Belt project, Dubois warned, we lose more than Burkina Faso. We lose the entire water market in West Africa. The DGSSE director added, our uranium contracts in Mali and Niger will be jeopardized. The entire French sphere of influence will fracture. The solution? Accelerate the water coup. The plan had already been seeded: arm opposition factions, manipulate public unrest, cut water delivery citing technical issues, and ignite a civil uprising. Aqua Global's CEO, Pierre Renaud, agreed. We'll reduce water flow by 60% next week. People will riot. Their endgame: frame Traore as a failed leader incapable of handling the crisis, then support a Western-friendly replacement, former Defense Minister Kabore. Already in Europe preparing his return. But they underestimated one thing: the loyalty of the people. 2 weeks later, chaos erupted in Ouagadougou. Protesters filled the streets. Government buildings burned. 2 military brigades defected. Zeta's home was attacked and set ablaze. But guards arrived just in time. His family was safe. The pattern was unmistakable: classic foreign destabilization. From a military base near the Mali border, Traore issued rapid commands. Zeta was escorted to a secure facility. Ministers were dispatched under protection. Secret routes were activated. But despite the defense measures, the situation was unraveling fast. Inside the palace war room, Traore reviewed troop positions. Northern forces were moving on the capital. A coup was underway. Should we go underground? Asked intelligence chief Sankura. No, Traore said, gripping the table. We go live. His decision stunned his aides. An hour later, Burkina Faso's television screens lit up with the image of their president, standing tall in full military uniform. Behind him, a massive map of the Sahara. My fellow citizens, he began, our nation is under attack, not by our own people, but by foreign powers who fear our future. And with that, he revealed the truth of the Blue Belt. Across Burkina Faso, families huddled around televisions, radios, and mobile phones. Internet connections flickered, but the signal carried through. On screen stood President Ibrahim Traoré, not hiding in a bunker, but addressing the nation from the heart of the palace, with calm defiance. My dear citizens, he began, his voice steady, we are living through a trial. Foreign powers are attempting to overthrow your elected government. Why? Because of one thing, water. He stepped aside to reveal a large digital map of the Sahara, where a glowing blue vein ran beneath the yellow sands. "We have discovered a massive underground water basin," he continued. "Ancient. Pure. Enough to supply all of Burkina Faso, and our neighbors, for a century. We call it the Blue Belt." Gasps echoed in homes and cafes. Hashtags like #BlueBelt and #OurWater began trending within minutes. Traore didn't hold back. He named Aqua Global. He mentioned former officials colluding abroad. He laid bare the mechanics of the Water Coup. But he didn't stop at accusation. "I call on our soldiers," he said, staring directly into the camera, "do not turn your weapons on your own people. You are protectors of this land, not mercenaries of foreign interests." As his words spread, something remarkable happened. On the outskirts of the capital, soldiers halted. Commanders questioned their orders. Footage emerged online, troops laying down weapons, citizens cheering them, offering water. In front of the palace, a crowd had begun to gather. They held handwritten banners. "Our water is ours," and "Stand for Blue Belt." From the rooftops to the markets, the people had heard their president's voice, and believed him. By morning, the coup had unraveled. Traitorous generals were arrested. Loyalist forces secured the city. For the first time in weeks, the sun rose over Ouagadougou without smoke trailing from its skyline. And in the streets, people chanted not just for water, but for dignity. 3 months after the failed coup, the desert was no longer just a place of emptiness, it had become a frontier of hope. On a windswept plateau at the edge of the Sahara, a massive platform was erected, adorned with the flags of Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Chad, and Senegal. Engineers, geologists, and dignitaries from across West Africa stood shoulder to shoulder. It was here, under the blistering sun, that President Traore and Dr. Zeta launched the first official drilling of the Blue Belt project. "This is not just a pipe in the ground," Traore said as he addressed the gathering. "It is a statement that Africa can solve Africa's problems. That water, our water, will no longer be a tool of control, but a source of freedom." Cheers erupted as Zeta activated the first drill. Giant rigs roared to life. Metal bit into ancient rock. Zeta, now a household name, explained the technical details. The water lay about 400 meters beneath the surface. Special drilling techniques, developed in China and adapted for the African terrain, would bring it up safely. The project would progress in stages, first to provide drinking water, then expand into irrigation and industrial supply. Initial results were promising. Just weeks after the ceremony, the first test well struck water, clear, cold, and ancient. Lab analysis revealed the water to be over 10,000 years old, naturally filtered by centuries of geology. Even in small amounts, it was enough to supply nearby settlements that had been dry for years. The people called it the return of the river. The world took notice. National Geographic called it Africa's Water Revolution. Al Jazeera and BBC aired special segments. The African Development Bank pledged $3 billion. The BRICS New Development Bank contributed another $1 billion for equipment and solar-powered infrastructure. Meanwhile, France and companies like Aqua Global waged a silent war. Equipment shipments were delayed. Spare parts were lost in transit. International lenders faced pressure to pull out. But the tide had turned. The people had water. They had tasted self-reliance. In Ouagadougou, the first water tankers from the project rolled into neighborhoods once served by ration cards. Children splashed in makeshift fountains. Elderly women wept as they filled pots without paying a foreign currency fee. President Traore and Dr. Zeta visited one of the new water centers. As they watched a young boy laugh under a stream of clean water, Traore turned to Zeta. "This," he said, "is why we fight." 2 years after the launch of the Blue Belt project, a new power bloc had emerged in West Africa. The Sahara Water Alliance, formed by Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Chad, and Senegal, was more than a water-sharing pact. It became a symbol of Pan-African cooperation, a united stand against dependency, debt traps, and neo-colonial control. What began as a collaboration to tap into a buried aquifer evolved into a platform for shared research, joint infrastructure, and regional stability. Water, it turned out, could bind more than just pipelines. At a summit hosted in Niamey, the alliance's member states formalized security agreements to protect shared water assets. Joint patrols were created to guard the pipeline corridors. Training academies were launched to educate a new generation of African hydrologists and engineers. Technical teams rotated between countries, carrying not just knowledge but a new sense of identity, sovereign and self-reliant. "We used to look to Paris or Washington for answers," said the president of Mali during the summit. "Now, we look to each other." This cooperation didn't go unnoticed. While some European governments began cautiously engaging with the alliance under new, fairer terms, others, particularly France, saw their influence wane. Lobbyists tried to pressure international banks to suspend funds. Trade deals were quietly restructured. Cyber attacks targeted water management systems. But they were met with digital fortresses built in partnership with South African and Indian tech firms. In the streets of Ouagadougou, billboards declared, "Water is life. And life belongs to Africa." The alliance's next step was bold: extend invitations to other nations, including Nigeria. The potential inclusion of Africa's largest economy would reshape the continent's power structure completely. Traore, in a private video call with alliance leaders, warned, "They will do everything to stop Nigeria from joining. Prepare for disruption." But even with the looming threat, the alliance stood firm. The Blue Belt was no longer a project. It was a movement. 5 years after the first drill broke through the desert crust, the Blue Belt was fully operational. From deep beneath the Sahara, millions of cubic meters of water now flowed daily through a vast network of solar-powered pumps and pipelines. Cities once on the brink of collapse brimmed with new life. Markets flourished. Fields long forgotten turned green. Around the main pumping station in northern Burkina Faso, an entire town had formed, complete with schools, clinics, and a new university focused on environmental engineering. In a press conference marking the 5th anniversary, President Traore stood before the world and declared, "This is not just about water. This is about reclaiming control. This is about proving that Africa can lead." When asked about relations with former colonial powers, Traore responded calmly, "We've turned a page. We welcome cooperation, but only on equal terms." Standing atop the main pumping station with Dr. Zeta, watching the Sahara fade into dusk, he reflected, "5 years ago, I wasn't sure we'd make it." Zeta smiled. "We didn't just make it. We changed everything." The pumps below them hummed on, relentlessly feeding a continent not just with water, but with a new kind of hope.